In this video I want to show you how you can improve the quality of your render by using what's called an ambient occlusion pass. Now the pass itself is just an extra render that you lay on top or use with your main scene. So here we've got the result of our main a scene that we've rendered from the Arc in Design tutorial, and if I switch on this extra layer, you can see that the quality of the shadows has really improved. And what I've done is, what I actually did was I rendered this pass, which is the ambient occlusion pass, which all it really does is capture the shadows in a very kind of like a pencil drawing almost, and when you actually lay that on top of the original render, you get extra depth in your shadows. So this is the original one, this is the original one with the ambient occlusion pass on top in Photoshop with the multiply blending mode applied to it. So how do we actually get this? How do we get this out of 3D Max? How do we get it to generate it? If I swap to 3D Max, here we are with the scene, and if I was to render it right now, we would get the first scene, which is fantastic, and we can save it by going to press the disk and save, and then tell it where we want to actually save it, which I won't do at this point because we've already done that as you've seen. But how do we get the ambient occlusion pass? Well, the first thing we should do is bring up the material editor by pressing M on the keyboard, choose a new free slot. Again, we're not going to use the standard, we're going to use Mental Ray this time. And if these aren't, if Mental Ray isn't in your list, then you need to set up Mental Ray as the renderer, which you can refer to a different tutorial to find out how to do that. And then, having just applied Mental Ray, there's some options here. We need to choose Surface, so we press None, and then again we bring up this list again, but this is a slightly different list, and it has Ambient Reflective Occlusion as the top option. Press OK, and you just see a sphere filled with white, which looks a little bit boring, but actually does some pretty amazing things. So having done that, we're just going to move that to the side, and we're going to go to rendering and choose render setup, or I could have pressed F10, and now I'm going to choose the processing tab, and we're going to find a section called material override. And what that does is, when you enable it, anything that goes in here in this slot will completely override any other options in the entire scene. So for example, our matte ball, our semi-gloss cube, and our glossy tabletop, those effects, those materials are going to disappear. So we've got ambient occlusion in our material editor. I'm going to drag that across into our material override slot, let go, and it says, do I want to make a copy of this in here, or do I want to use an instance? I don't want to make a copy, because if I alter these settings down here now, then they won't be reflected in there. I want an instance. That means that when I do, if I was to change these to see what they did, then they would be automatically reflected every time I render. So we want instance in this case. Press OK, and because it's ticked, it will work straight away. So if I press render now, and there we are. So there's the shadow, the ambient occlusion shadows of this particular scene. There's no colour, it doesn't need any colour at all, it just wants the shadows so that we can lay it on top of their normal render. So that's how you make the ambient occlusion pass. And just as a reminder, once you've made it, you bring in your original render in Photoshop, make a new layer, paste in, or in fact open if it's a file, open your ambient occlusion pass, switch it on top, and there we are. That's what it would normally look like on top. Change your your blending mode to multiply, or in fact some of the others might look just as good, but multiply works very well, as you can see, and you've got some extra shadows, and this is a really good technique for deepening the quality of your scene.